Okay, good evening, each and everyone. Welcome to the Irie Myrie and Friends show. This evening, it is indeed a pleasure to have four distinguished, three attorney at law who will be sharing their views on whether or not Jamaica should separate from the Privy Council as the last court of appeal or embrace the Caribbean Court of Justice. Bert Samuels, and let me say happy belated birthday and welcome back once again.
Thank you.
High Commissioner, Ambassador, and Ambassador Alun Nambet Asamba. Welcome back again, Ambassador. And Anthony Brown. Anthony Brown resides in the UK and who is a formidable force in the legal aspect of the Windrush movement. Welcome all. One would say that the jury is out on this, that is the Jamaican people. Both my co-host, Ralston Chamberlain, and I, with our guest, will discuss this important subject. We look forward to an educational and informative show. Please join us, please join us on the following social media platforms: Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and YouTube at Irie Myrie. We would also appreciate you sharing it with your friends and as well. And over to you, Ralston.
All right, good evening and welcome, lady and gentlemen. Let me just correct something that Colin has said. Alun Nasamba is former High Commissioner to London. He wasn't here when you were making that correction, Alun. But welcome, lady and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. So I want to start by trying to get an understanding from each of you, your position on whether we should accede to the CCJ. I know Bert has a stance on it already and he has made it very clear. So I would want to just have him give our listeners the framework from which he's coming and why he's so strident on this. So I'm going to start with you, Bert.
Okay, greetings to your listeners. I've said before that I want the records to be corrected. I'm a Pan-Africanist and therefore I'm an anti-monarchist. So any description of me as King's Counsel, though it is well intended, is in fact against my principles. I do not accept or wish to be associated with the monarchy in England. And I'm also the deputy chair of the Reparation Council of Jamaica. And we're striving to decolonize as many institutions as possible, one of which is the Privy Council itself. The Privy Council was formed in 1833, the same year as the Abolition Act. So as slavery was abolished, then the Privy Council was put in place. And it is that we should petition the Queen, the King. So we do not really have appeals to the King. We have petitions to the King. And it is not really a court. It is a committee that advises the King or the Queen whether they should accede to an appeal. And therefore, it is part of the colonial structure, which was a very sad part of our history. So to leave the Privy Council is an overdue and something that we should eradicate so that we can move on to full dignity as Pan-Africanists, as African Jamaicans. It's an institution that is colonial, and it makes him head of the judiciary, and also he happens to be head of the executive and the legislature. It's a colonial and a very, very sad day when we have a court like that in place. That's my position.
All right. Before I move to Alun and Anthony, Bert, I just, for those of us who are not legally minded, I want you to just explain the difference between the whole issue of an appeal and a petition, because I heard you say it's not an appeal. And I hear several people refer to, oh, this is our final court of appeal. So
That's
what
correct.
is the difference between the appeal and the petition, as you indicated?
Fine. So what happens is that when you go to court, either the parish court in the several parishes of Jamaica or the Supreme Court, and you're not satisfied with the judgment, you can appeal to the Jamaican Court of Appeal, so that once you lose out at the Jamaican Court of Appeal, then you can, by Section 110 of the Constitution, ask that your matter be considered by the Privy Council, which is a committee It is not called a court. And the committee listens and it gives its opinion to the king. And then the king, out of convention, accepts that opinion and then puts down a judgment in favor of his subjects. So because of the colonial structure, it's not called a court. It's really an advisory body, which happens to be judges, that gives their opinion, and those opinions are accepted by His Majesty. Then he issues his order. So, for example, in the cartel case, when the decision was made, the judgment was made, it had to be ratified 2 weeks later by the king. And he sent his order down here and asked at the Court of Appeal, and I quote, obey the order promptly. That was part of what the King of England said about the appeal. So the structure is not calling it a court, it's calling it a committee. Yes, that's
Okay.
it.
Thank you. Alun, your position on it, do we go CCJ or we remain with the Privy Council?
Well, the thing is that Bert and I are at one with this matter. Bert and I are at one. I just want to say two things, and I understand, and I think that part of the challenge that we're having for those persons who are not lawyers is that there has not been enough discussion about this matter in the way that Bert has put it out there. Because I hear persons who I would think have more understanding of language and how language is used, who are saying that they do not understand the difference. Now, Bert has really explained, you know, our democracy rests on three arms: the executive, which is the prime minister and cabinet; the legislature, which is the parliament made up of the two houses, the lower and the upper house; and the judiciary, which is the whole court system going up to what is really called the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. And as Bert explains, when the Judicial Committee makes a decision, after hearing the arguments that have been put to it by petition to the sovereign, they advise the king, they advise the sovereign. Prior to King Charles becoming king, it was Queen Elizabeth II. So the committee advises the queen, or the king, as is now is, and the king advises his subjects that they are to put in place the decision which he has accepted from the Privy Council.
Yeah.
Now, how can we say we are moving to remove the king as our head of state and still retain that section of the duties? I'm calling it duties, but let us call it what it really is, the prerogative of the king. We're leaving that with him. That makes absolutely no sense. The discussion about the CCJ has been taking place for a long time, and we have never as a country been able to have the kind of discussion with the level of honesty that is required to move us. And even with this committee, because it is now it is a committee of the cabinet that has made its recommendations to the cabinet. On page 11 of the cover note, not the report itself, paragraph 4.14, and I'm going to read it. It says, final appellate court. No consensus was reached on the issue of the final appellate court. As such, there is no recommendation for an amendment to the Constitution in that regard.
Oh my God.
That is what the report says, and it is signed by the minister, Marlene Malahoo Fort, QC, JP, MP, Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, and it is dated the 21st of May, 2024. But let me just finish what 4.14 says. It says, however, consensus could be built through a meeting between the leaders, failing which the issue could be placed on the referendum ballot. Now, how do you place something on a referendum ballot?
Yes.
If you do not break down in a way that people will be able to understand what exactly this means. And I think Bert has said it very well, that the appeals to the Privy Council is a petition to the sovereign, who is the king at the moment, and the Privy Council is the advisory body to the king, which means when we send an appeal to the Privy Council advises the king, and the king proclaims what the law is. And as Bert just said, writes to our Court of Appeal and says, you are to act immediately.
And obey.
And obey.
The word obey is there. Yes.
Obey. You are to act and obey. And that is what it means. Now, the Caribbean Court of Justice is a court that our CARICOM partners have agreed to put in place. And I don't want anybody to tell me which countries have signed on to the Caribbean Court of Justice and which countries have not, because I'm dealing with Jamaica.
That's right.
Not only that, we are already paying for the Caribbean Court of Justice. We are paying for it. The only portion of the Caribbean Court of Justice that we are utilizing at the moment is that section of the court that interprets the Treaty of Chaguaramas, which is the treaty that establishes CARICOM. And that is where the Myrie case went to. And we got a judgment which was in favor of Jamaica.
And the court came here. It physically came here.
Yes, thank you, Bert. Now, the other issue, and Bert has really now said what I wanted to say, is that the court will move from jurisdiction to jurisdiction to hear the cases that is brought before it from a particular jurisdiction. In the Myrie case, they came to Jamaica. So Miss Myrie did not have to find airfare and all of the accoutrements of having a hearing that we now have to get to go to the Privy Council, including visas.
Yes, which can be refused.
Oh, yes.
But let me
I just read an article. I read an article somewhere that somebody wrote. It has nothing to do with this, but since you talk about refusal of visas, that the first world countries are using our applications for visa to earn money from us because they refuse more than they grant visas. So how can your final court, after you have removed the sovereign, the monarch, as your head of state, how can you still be appealing to the head of state to be your final court when the decision that comes is to our court to say, obey immediately. Obey.
But let me ask you though, Alun, because I hear you mention the educational piece of it.
Yes.
Where have we gone wrong in that part, in not allowing people to be aware? Because had Bert not said the old issue of a petition and appeal, I would still be thinking that this is our final court of appeal and we're making an appeal. So who now do we turn to for that educational part so that our people can understand exactly what it is and where we're coming from with this issue?
Well, let me tell you this. The report that went to cabinet is entitled The Report of the Constitutional Reform Committee on the transition of the Republic of Jamaica and other matters. So the issue of the court is lumped in that thing that says and other matters. It is very clear that this report, which is a report which is sent to the cabinet, did not see it as their requirement to get the views of the ordinary citizens of Jamaica. I do not know what the plan that the government has for that to be done, but there is no way that we can go into a referendum with people not really understanding the difference between the Privy Council, which is the judicial committee of the Privy Council that advises the monarch. And you know, Bert, I'm very glad that you make that point, because whenever we speak, we need to say that what the Privy Council does is advising the monarch.
Yes. Yeah. But there's another spin to it. Can I just come in here and give another spin to it?
Sure.
Right. So it looks to me now that we are divorcing 2/3 of the cake, but we're keeping 1/3. So, you know, a spouse goes to court to divorce her husband or his wife, and he gets the divorce for 2/3, because we get the divorce for the legislature, we don't get the divorce for the executive, but we're keeping the judiciary side of it. That's totally nonsensical. You're either divorced or you're not. So we're keeping the court side or the judge side of the monarchy. But listen to this. If we are in a democracy, the judges of the Court of Appeal of Jamaica, the judges of the High Court of Jamaica, and the parish court judges, they come under the Judicial Services Committee. The Judicial Services Committee is elected by the state, the government, those members. So we are integrally involved in the appointment of our judges. How are we involved in the appointment of the Privy Council judges? You tell me. We have a set of people who are placed upon us. We don't know where they're from. We don't know their biases. They are not appointed by the people of Jamaica through its representatives. So it cannot be part of our democracy. The British would not allow another state to be appointing their judges. So it flies in the face of democracy that the people have no say in the appointment of the Privy Council judges. Now, that in itself is a self-esteem issue. That in itself is a self-esteem issue that people are imposed. And I tell you what is happening. Alun, I don't know if you know what is happening now. There's a current out there that certain people would not have won their appeals except it were for the Privy Council. And those white men have saved us. And let us keep them, because only they can give us justice. That's a big, big thing being said out there because of a very popular entertainer whose case he won in the Privy Council. So that's what we're up and against. We're up and against the miseducation of the population. So as Alun has said, if we don't have public education, we may get a referendum that embarrasses us. It happened in Grenada. When they tried to get a referendum on the Privy Council, the majority of people in Grenada said, let's keep the Privy Council. Can you imagine that? So when the people are miseducated, then that is what we have. And I know where the miseducation is coming from. But I'll speak at another time where the Privy Council is concerned and why the people are misunderstanding and giving credit to the Privy Council.
Let me just say this, and again, I'm going to refer to the report of the Constitutional Reform Committee. The report is 103 pages long. And the section that deals with the amendment process of the appeals to the Privy Council is contained on page 45. And I'm going to read it because I think this puts in context what Bert just says. 12.1, there have been considerable discussions on the question of whether Jamaica should, at this time, abolish appeals to the judicial Committee of the Privy Council and substitute the Caribbean Court of Justice as its final appellate court. Such a change is unlikely to be achieved unless the two political parties represented in the parliament are in support. It goes on to say at 12.2, at the commencement of its work, the CRC understood the government's position to be that the issue of the final court would be considered at a later stage, while the opposition was pressing for it to be included in the first phase of the work. Since then, the leader of the opposition has indicated on a political platform that he will not support the reform if it excludes a determination of the final court at this time. The position of government remains that it should be dealt with at a later stage and that the matter be fully debated in the public sphere. So there is an agreement about the need for the debate. However, that is not going to happen in the first phase. And as Bert just said, it's as if you are getting a divorce, which is only 2/3 complete.
Mm-hmm.
How can you have a divorce, which is essentially what it is, from the monarch, and you only getting a 2/3 divorce?
Let me bring in Anthony, because you've been listening for quite a while. Let me hear your position. Do we stay with the CCJ? Sorry, do we stay with the Privy Council or do we move to the CCJ?
Well, my thoughts come from my personal experience of appealing to the monarch. Because in the UK we have what's called the Windrush scandal, and the government came out with a scheme to restore people's status. They'd removed people's citizenship of the United Kingdom and colony status when Jamaica became independent in 1962, and that made people living in the UK subject to immigration law. And then over the years, as the laws changed, they required more and more proof that people had the right to live in the country, and that led to the Windrush scandal because people couldn't produce these documents, and people were deported back to Jamaica. 160 people between 2002 and about 2018 were deported who were UK citizens in effect. It's just that they didn't have the documents to prove that they had the right to be here. And the government brought in a scheme to give people back their status and pay compensation. So I was one of those people who was affected because I'd come to the UK as a child. My father came here as a student to study civil engineering. And then after his training and working in the UK, he came back to Jamaica and lectured at CARS. And I came back to Jamaica and went to Jamaica College. So after 4 years, I came back here, wanted to go to university, but was threatened with deportation. So that was back in the 80s. So roll forward 35 years, the government comes up with this scheme. Prime Minister of Jamaica comes to the UK for a Commonwealth conference and calls out to the Jamaican community saying, we should trust this scheme, and he'll be keeping a watch on it. But we found that the scheme wasn't doing what it said that it should do. So I'd just done my law studies, and we decided to make an application to the courts for additional review. So in effect, what it is a petition to the Queen. And the Queen then appoints a judge to look at those situations that, you're complaining about with the government. So my experience was that the system does empower the citizen, and whereas, there are these historic issues about, the role of the monarch and and what has happened in history. What we have is a system that has evolved, and it's operated, for resolving issues that the citizens have. And it's a system that Jamaica has adopted or still uses. And my experience is that the system works very well. I found that the judge was fair in his considerations. The judgment that he gave was quite lengthy, quite thorough. Um, I think he did more than he needed to do. So my experience is making an application or a petition to the Queen. There are names and there are words, but that's the case in the law. You have words that lawyers use that are not used in normal course. The word petition, I mean, it just simply, I mean, you have petitions at various levels of the courts. You could have a petition to dismiss a case. With it being a petition to the Judicial Review Committee, it's sorry, the Privy Council, it's those are just those are just the words that we use, and obeying is something that you have to do with a judgment in most court cases. We have the words court order, so I wouldn't be too hung up on the words that I use. It's whether the system is being effective in what it's tasked to do. And my experience is that it's effective and it works very well. And I think that if we have a system that we've been using for quite some time, there are great benefits in maintaining it, but also we can look to improve it and make it evolve. So I think the system as it is takes cases from around the Commonwealth and is improved by it all the time.
Can I
So
come in here?
that's my view.
Before you come in, though, Bert, because I want to be clear on where Attorney Anthony is going. If I understand you correctly, you based on your experience, the system is working. It's a system that is in place. It is working. No need for us to move away from it because it's not broken.
I think though he's
1 second alone. Let me just have him respond to that. Is that your argument then?
Yeah, that's my argument, and I see that.
Yeah, I
I
see
want to come
Alun
in. I want to come
Bert
in.
wants to come in. All right,
Yeah,
let me
I
allow
think-
Bert first and then Alun.
I respect his position. There was a British problem addressed by a British court.
exactly.
The Windrush issue is a British problem which is addressed by a British court. The discussion
Exactly.
we're having here happens to be Jamaica as an independent country with judges who we have nothing to do with their appointment, and that's a different discussion. The British will not allow the French government, the courts in France, to determine issues in England. And from an esteem point of view, I am no different from a Frenchman. I'm no different from an Englishman. I do not want to farm out or give out the jurisprudence and the courts from another country to dictate to my people. And I've said before, the judges of the Privy Council are not appointed by Jamaicans. Doesn't that offend principles in England, in any independent country? So what is good for the English is good enough for us. So that argument could not be maintained in England, that Jamaican judges are the final courts for the English people. So it's a different discussion.
Can I just correct you on something there? Can I just correct you on something there? we have the human rights courts here in Europe,
Yes.
and the British government and the British courts are subject to rulings in the
Yes, but
European
our
Court of
British,
Human Rights.
but that committee have English people on it. That committee that listens to the complaints about human rights, is it staffed by English judges or English too? Is it?
In some cases, but not in every
And with
case.
Brexit, are you going to stay there?
Yes, they are
Okay.
still part of that
Yeah,
system, that court
but your
system.
judges, your people staff that. The British people staff that commission, the Human Rights Commission.
Not in all cases.
No,
Not in
but
all
in
cases.
some cases, please.
Yes.
Please. I
Yes.
know the system, bro.
May
I know the
may
system.
may
Yes,
I-
Alun, go
Yes,
ahead.
And the Jamaican government does have input into whether or not the cases are dealt with by British courts.
Why did they get rid of the House of Lords in England? Is it because it was hereditary rather than appointed in a way, my brother? Why did they get rid of the House of Lords as a final arbiter? Wasn't it because it was not democratically elected? Yes or no?
No, it was about separation of the legislature
Oh.
and
So those principles,
those administering.
those principles allowed a court to vanish.
No,
No, by the way, we're speaking about Jamaica now.
Yeah.
This discussion is about the interests of Jamaica, please, as an independent country.
Right, but Jamaica still are British subjects. The politicians do swear allegiance to,
and that's why we don't want to be the subject of His Majesty's court.
Yeah.
You are comfortable with us being subjects of the British?
Well, we're all subjects, aren't we?
All the
people of the Commonwealth.
No, are you comfortable with us being subjects of the king? You tell me, are you comfortable with being subjects of King Charles?
I think what we need to let me just understand. No, you need to understand what I need to answer the question. So
no, you said we are subjects. I'm asking you whether you're comfortable. I'm asking you whether you are comfortable to be this me looking at me to be the subject of King Charles. Thank you. Now I understand.
I'm comfortable in swearing allegiance.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
To that system.
Thank you.
All right. Let me Alun wanted to come in for a moment.
Yes, Alun. Yes, Alun.
Anthony is speaking from a position of a person who lives in the UK
and a British citizen
under British rule.
Yes.
And in relation to the reparations issue, that is an issue between the people who are of Jamaican descent, but who live in the UK and are seeking to get reparations from the British government. It is a completely different situation. Those cases, you have to bring your matter in the British court. As Bert just said, they would not want a court in France, for example, to make a ruling on that matter. It has to be a ruling in a British court. I would like to very, very strongly put to you, Anthony, that situation stands on its own and is not the situation we're dealing with, where cases are brought from Jamaica with people who are living in Jamaica, who are subject to Jamaican law, having to go to by petition to the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. I also want to say this: not every country that is a member of the Commonwealth subscribes to the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council as being their final court. Not every, the Commonwealth does not make laws. The Commonwealth does not make laws for the countries that are members. The Commonwealth is a group of countries who have decided to join the Commonwealth, and there are a few who were never subject to British rule. Mozambique, for example. And there are other countries that are applying to join the Commonwealth, and they have never been subject to the British as being their sovereign. I want to make that very clear. I also want to make it very clear that when Jamaica becomes a republic, Jamaica can choose. It does not leave the country. Sorry, it does not leave the Commonwealth. It can choose to continue being a member of the Commonwealth, because the Commonwealth acts in the way that the African Union acts, for example, in the way that the United Nations act, where countries join for whatever reasons. And those organizations do not make laws that will be taken up unless a country would like to do that. And I want to make it very clear that the Commonwealth is not a lawmaking nor a determination of what the law is. It is a grouping of countries who come together to assist each other. And I want to make it clear. So I have heard persons saying that when Jamaica becomes a republic, we are no longer going to be a member of the Commonwealth. That is not true. That is not true. And I want to make it also clear, Anthony, that the reparations issue that you are working on, the correct court for you to go to is the court in the UK, because they are the ones who are to be making reparations to the Jamaicans who they have taken to build their country and now want to send them home. I wanted the European Union came in. One of the big arguments why Brexit came about is because the British people said they did not want the court in the European Union to make rules and laws governing the UK.
Yes, they wanted their independence. That's what I knew.
Exactly.
So I do agree that in those situations with regards to independence, I was in agreement with the Brexit. So I understand those arguments very well. But what we're talking about here is really a different aspect of the system. So when we talk about the Windrush cases and so on, it does affect Jamaicans. There are many Jamaicans at the moment who have been impacted,
But
and
those
people all over the
cases have
Caribbean.
never
So,
brought in
so,
Jamaica.
so,
You need to
yes,
make a
just
distinction,
yeah,
Anthony.
yeah. Let me finish
Those
making the
cases
point.
have never been brought in Jamaica. Those cases have to be brought in the UK, because at the end of the day, when a judgment is given, it is the UK who is going to pay those Jamaicans.
Yeah, let me finish making the point.
Yes, it's apples and bananas. Go ahead.
So my point is that even though Jamaica is independent and Britain is a separate country, as a people, we do have interests across the board. And when you talked about the Commonwealth, and people choosing to be part of the Commonwealth and so on. The issue around the legal systems in the Commonwealth is that you have different traditions and developments within each country, and which makes them choose how they're going to set up their and have their legal systems. But through the English legal system or the common law, that there are various precedents that can be made in various jurisdictions that is taken into consideration in
But
cases
yeah, yes.
In the court. So
Yeah,
what I'm saying is that
yeah.
this is a system that has served the peoples of the Commonwealth of Jamaica.
Yeah.
A subject is just someone who swears allegiance to, you know, the system, which is the crown. So,
But
I mean, we play with these words, but at the end of the day, what we need to look at is the system effective in terms of what it's proposing to do?
no,
And
but it
I'm saying
seems to
that
me,
it
may I
is.
just ask you, Anthony, it seems to me that you seem to have no problem with considering Jamaica being independent at one time, one
Yes,
at the same time. We are subjects of
to
the
an
king.
extent.
You're comfortable with that. You're okay with
Well,
that.
we're independent to an extent
When
because
you
you
say
know
we, are
independence
you
has.
Jamaican? May I just ask, are you Jamaican or you're
Yes,
British?
I am Jamaican. I
Are
am
you
Jamaican.
British? Are you
I'm
British?
British. Yes,
I
I
see.
have dual
Well, that's it.
nationality.
Okay, so that's the problem, I think. I am strong, I'm strictly Jamaican. So I don't have my legs to one leg in Jamaica, one in Britain.
And one leg.
And I must tell you,
All
as
right,
a lawyer,
No,
it is highly
you're
contradictory for you to
okay.
tell me that we are independent and we're at the
Mm,
same time we are subjects of King Charles. That can't be a lawyer's position, my brother. How could you
mm.
come to that view respectfully? How could you come to that view?
Let
That
me
we are
just give
subjects
Because
of the king?
because
What?
let me
because
just give
Jamaica
you one more
decided
point.
to
I
retain the
Anthony, you
you
would
know
just give me a chance
King
on this.
Charles as the monarch.
No, that's
So
not true. That's not true. The Constitution was made in April 1962 at
yes,
Buckingham Palace. It's not
right.
Jamaicans who wanted that, my brother.
In
You
fact, it
must
is
know your
called
No,
history. We
called
didn't.
the
no.
order in
It's an
council.
order in council in Queen Elizabeth's Buckingham
Yes,
Palace. Why do you come here
So
and say
called
that
the
it's we
constitution.
wanted the monarchy? Why
no,
you
you misheard me. I said that
we wanted
Jamaicans still.
slavery too, right? Let me hear you on that. Do you think we wanted
So
slavery? No, I
so
want to hear you, bro.
the
Did we want
Jamaican
slavery?
Parliament, the
No, did
Jamaican
we want
Parliament has
slavery?
had the Jamaican Parliament.
Are you ashamed to know that up to
You're not.
2015, up to
Yeah.
2015, Windrush Generation was paying off the 20 million pounds paid to the planters when we got nothing. Are you ashamed of that? Let me repeat it.
So
That it
let
was
me
a
deal with the
charge.
first
The
question, and then I'll come on to that
Windrush
if you want.
people, the Windrush African Jamaicans went to England and up to
Yeah,
2015, paying taxes, helped to pay back the
yeah,
planters 20 million
yeah.
pounds who were compensated and we were not. Are you
I'll
comfortable with that, bro? Tell me.
I'll come on to that. I don't want to be
No,
distracted
go
from
on
the
to it
first
now, man.
question.
It's
Before
So
bothering
you
me.
so so the
before you
first
let
question was
me get
about
back, let me get back to the
whether or not the
topic.
Jamaican
One
Parliament,
second,
both
Alun.
the opposition and the governing party, they've had 60 years over 60 years to make a decision whether or not they wanted to be a republic, but they continued with the current situation. So what I'm
No,
saying is,
no,
the
no, no,
choice is there.
no.
One second, Alun. Let him. I'm gonna
No,
let him
So
complete.
so now they're coming to the stage where they're going to go for a referendum, possibly, but they could have made that decision before. So the issue is that they've stuck with it, and I'm saying that they should still stick with it. Coming on to enslavement, over the years, we as a people around the world, we've been rebelling and fighting against enslavement, and here in the UK too, people have been challenging the status quo and fighting against enslavement. And when between Sam Sharp and the abolitionists here in the UK managed to get the British government to pass a law to emancipate slaves and also to stop the slave trade back in 1807, the British did put up a fight against other people with their navy to stop it. So I'm saying that
My God.
things develop, and we can find people who will fight with us, for human rights.
Okay,
may
so
Alun.
you
I come
okay.
in now?
Alun.
The
Yes.
Thank
British
you,
gave us
Alun.
freedom. Oh my God.
thank you. I
Well, I
want
did
to
say Sam Sharp had a hand in it.
go back. I want to go back to the point about the Commonwealth, because even in this report, the CRC recognizes that, as I indicated before, that the Commonwealth is made up of nations, independent countries from Africa, the Americas, Asia, Europe, and the Pacific. they have joined the Commonwealth. The last 4 countries to have joined, Mozambique, Rwanda, Gabon, and Togo, have no historical ties with the British Empire. And in today's context, the relationship within the Commonwealth have evolved with reduced reference to the monarch. I want to make that very clear. The British monarch is a symbolic head of the Commonwealth of Nations. The British monarch is not involved in the running of the Commonwealth. That's one. The second point which Bert makes, and which I think we cannot gloss over, is the fact that the 20 million pounds that was paid to the owners of slaves and not 1 cent to the slaves themselves. And I want to share a personal experience.
Yeah.
Professor Palmer, Sir Professor Palmer, drove me around whenever I went to Edinburgh and to Glasgow and showed me houses. And he would say to me, that was built from the proceeds of 2 slaves. That was built from the proceeds of 5 slaves. That was built from the proceeds of 10 slaves. So you could see that the country was built not just from what they earned in Jamaica and sent it back to the UK, but from what they got when the government abolished slavery and paid them for it. I want to say that I recognize the fight that Anthony and his group is making, but it is not the same fight for us in Jamaica. It is not.
All right. I want to shift gear a little bit, Bert, because one of the points that you made is that the judges are selected in Britain, and so there's no kind of correlation. But I believe it was Lord Reid who was making the argument that, oh, they're going to make the court more accessible and then they could invite representatives from the Caribbean. What do you make of that argument? Is it an insult?
Okay, no, that's very interesting, because Lord Reid does not look at our constitution and see how the judiciary is structured in that constitution. And the point has been made by Hilton and others here that the suggestion offends our constitution, because the appointment of judges to our court is appointment by a certain committee and a certain structure. And there is nothing in the constitution that allows judges to be appointed to the Privy Council. It is locked into Charles and who he wants to be on his committee, so that it is not workable. It is just a token to make us feel a little more comfortable that we are participating. And what it does, it recognizes that the judges of the Privy Council are not, with the Jamaican people have no say in who becomes Lord Reid himself. We don't, where did he come from? We don't know. He just is foisted on us. So it makes a point about that. But back to the question of the rating of the Privy Council now, and that it is saving Black people and giving us freedom. I just like to read something I wrote about a week ago. He said, the criticism is pointed at our own local court of appeal and the quality of its judgment. The statistics will show that in 2023, of the 5 appeals from Jamaica to the Privy Council, 3 were dismissed and 2 appeals allowed. That is, the Jamaican Court of Appeal's decision were affirmed with respect to 3 of the 5 appeals. In the year 2022, in England, the final Court of Appeal reversed the Court of Appeal of England in 19 of 59 appeals. That is 1/3 success rate. Note that during the 2-year period between 2020 and 2022, the success rate in litigants who appealed from the British Court of Appeal to its apex appellate court was 48%. So the point I'm making, that in the English structure, the final Court of Appeal is reversing its own Court of Appeal, so that when the Privy Council reverses our Court of Appeal and in a less dramatic way. Everybody's trying to say, oh, the Jamaican Court of Appeal, is not qualified, the judgments are not good. When the statistics are showing that the apex court in England is reversing its own Court of Appeal at a higher rate than the Privy Council is reversing the Jamaican Court of Appeal. I don't know if I'm making it clear enough.
Yes, it's
Because
clear.
people are saying, oh, we need the Privy Council to give us freedom. And you can hear Anthony, endorsing that kind of thing, that, it's a good place. It's been there and it's working. It's working. Working for whom? And who put them there? If you believe in democracy, how can you be subscribing to an arm of the government that the people have no say in, unless you don't believe in democracy? That's my say.
Well, the government of Jamaica does have a say. Parliament does have a say in whether
In the
or not
appointment of judges to the Privy Council?
in whether or not the Privy Council is the Court of Appeal. They can have a referendum and they can get rid of the monarch and they can join, the Caribbean Court.
But you
But
say it's working,
they've
man.
not
So
done that.
don't suggest. No, you say it's
So
working.
I
So why are
said
you
the
suggesting a
system. I
change?
said the system. I said the system is working. I said the government in Jamaica. You're saying that they have
Yeah.
no say, and I'm saying they do have a say. They have a choice as to whether they're
No,
part
I
of that
think the
system or not.
argument, though, Anthony, that Bert is
Mm.
making is that we have no say in who the judges are.
Yeah.
And so he has a big problem with that. But let me shift
Right.
it to Alun. You and Bert agree that we should accede to the CCJ, but what of the argument that is being put forward by many is that, the CCJ doesn't have the experience that the Privy Council have, because you hear that.
Yes.
CCJ
Be
has
careful
been-
how you say that. I've been a lawyer for 45 years. I'm not sure Lord Reed has been a lawyer for 45 years. So be careful.
One second, Bert.
Yeah.
I'm just wanting to.
No, I'm not coming at you.
Okay. I'm just saying
When we
that
talk-
many are putting that argument forward, though, and you
Yeah,
would
but
have.
listen,
Yeah.
the judges of the Privy Council are human beings. The judges of the Caribbean Court of Justice are human beings. They are as experienced lawyers as are the Privy Council judges. The only difference is the color and the ethnicity of the people. So I don't understand what I'm trying to say. When we started to play cricket 100 years ago, the English used to whop us up, right? When we started to play cricket, we started to whop them up in the 70s. So that when we can have institutions that are equal to and better than English institutions. So I know a lot of Caribbean Court of Justice judges. Duke Pollard was my classmate. He's Guyanese. He was a judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice, an eloquent counsel. Have you seen the judgments out of the Caribbean Court of Justice? They are very high standard.
Yes.
Very high standard. I don't know if Anthony has read one of them.
Well, let me tell you this. The question about the judges on the on the Caribbean Court of Justice. The Caribbean Court of Justice, I remember about 20 years ago, Mr. Bruce Golding said, let us see how they operate. They have been operating now for 20 years. How much more experience do we expect to get? How can we say, I don't think anybody has pointed to any bad judgments or any judgments of a lesser standard than we are used to that has come out of the CCJ. Nobody can say that. And so I have to agree with Bert. It's the color. And it's because most of them were trained right here in the Caribbean by the best that we had to offer.
At my graduation ceremony in 1979, Lord Dipler came and he gave the main address. He made the point that Jamaican lawyers are better trained than English lawyers. He said that, Lord Dipler, not me. Oh, please. And what's that? That's 45 years ago. Thank you.
I also want to just remind those who are listening that several years ago, the president of the court of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council suggested that we ought to be moving away from the Privy Council because we are taking up their time.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't spoken about the cost of going to the Privy Council.
Oh, yes.
That's why only 5 cases go per
Yes.
year. But about how many cases go to the Privy Council? in a year?
Last year, 5 cases went to the Privy Council.
Exactly.
And let me tell you what they're saying, Asamba. What they're trying to do is mislead the Jamaican public. They're saying that we can have Zoom hearings, right, in the Privy Council, so we can stay here. What they're hiding is that for you to file a matter in the Privy Council, you have to have agents, Privy Council agents or solicitors, and you have to pay them hefty sums to file your matters in the Privy Council. So it's trying to, you know, put the wool over our eyes. It's not so. It is extremely costly. Do you know that the cartel appeal is going to cost the Jamaican government, between us, the lawyers for the appellants, and the British lawyer and the DPP and the 2 other lawyers, over 100 million Jamaican dollars? Do you realize that? It's going to cost that.
Who can afford it?
Yes.
Who can afford it? Because I wonder if people understood what Bert says. You can't file the papers from Jamaica, even though it is said you can have Zoom, you can do the cases by Zoom. You cannot file the papers from Jamaica. You have to engage and retain British counsel, British solicitors to file the cases on your behalf. And that is why the average that goes there every year is only about 5.
Anthony, I hear you say that the government had been trying for over 60 years to move away from the Privy Council. Is it your then argument that it is reason then for us to stay with the Privy Council because there's no resolve in moving away?
No, I was saying that since independence, the Jamaican government or Jamaican people has had a choice as to whether they want to stick with the monarchy, and until now they have. I'm hearing that a referendum is being proposed, and you know there was questions spoken of this evening as to whether or not it would be won, and they're saying that in other islands, you know, the referendum was lost. So that says to me that they've had a choice and they've chosen to go along with
Sure, Anthony's going to fly down
the
here.
government or the people?
The government Anthony's going to fly down here for that referendum.
I want to disabuse you of that.
Well,
Hello.
the government is of the people, so I don't think there's much sense in separating them, is there? So at the end of the day, the people of Jamaica elect their representatives, and they act on their behalf. And over 60 years, they haven't chosen to make that change. So I'm saying that you can't say that something was foisted on you when you had the choice to get rid of it and you haven't.
No, we're not talking about getting rid of the king now, We're not talking about getting rid of the king. But I want to say that this is not the first time that we're having work done on the reform of the Constitution. Bert, you will recall when we were at Cave Hill in 1977, there was a Constitutional Reform Commission.
Yes.
You remember that?
That's right. But it has been committee time, that's why it doesn't move forward.
And when the government changed in 1980, it was disbanded. Work had begun at that time because I remember many law students got jobs to go around and have school what you call it, assembly.
Yes, I was part of that. I was part of that.
Going around and talking to groups of farmers, going around and talking in schools, using the school rooms to have meetings with the committee to talk about the kind of government that we want to have, to talk about moving away. Town hall meetings were held, and that was disbanded in 1980 when the government changed. I think we did some more work on that in the 1990s. This is the third time now that we are looking at making the change. It is not correct and gives the wrong impression to say that we have had 60 years and we have done nothing about it. The opposition has made it very clear. I think we're all very clear on the need to move away from the sovereign and become a republic. I think there's agreement across the board on that.
Yeah.
So, but the reason why I quoted from the report is that it was not something that was considered by the CRC in any serious way.
No, they seem to. The two-thirds divorce. The two-thirds divorce is the issue. Yes.
It was not considered in any serious way. And that is why I read you at page 45 and 46 of a 103-page report. 103, I think it is. 103. 1.5 pages was given to the issue of our final Court of Appeal on the basis that it will become the second part of this divorce. It will become the second part of this report. If we don't have the monarch as our head of state, as the head of the executive and the head of the legislature, how can we have the monarch telling us that my Privy Council has advised me and you need to obey and act?
So listen, Asambe, listen to this now. So if someone takes the executive in Jamaica to court, right? When the monarch is gone and the two other executives, then the final hearing is going to be by the same monarch again?
Yes.
When we get rid of them for the parliament and we get rid of them for the executive, and the Privy Council remains. When we have an issue and we have to take the case all the way up and it goes back to His Majesty, how could that be?
I also want to make the point that in the deliberations of the CRC, and there is a list of persons who made representations to the CRC, those persons focused on, they received 28 submissions from individuals and organizations and heard in-person presentations from 8 of those persons. Those people did not focus on the Caribbean Court of Justice because the CRC itself was set up in such a way that this is not something that they were going to be dealing with from the beginning.
But then do you buy the argument then alone that, okay, it's coming, but it's coming in phase 2?
But what does Bert keep saying? What does the phase 2 mean? How can we?
Asamba, you know, let me remind you what is the agenda. Some people want the final Court of Appeal to be a Jamaican court, not a Caribbean. You know, they are regionalists like you and I, because we studied in Barbados. We love the University of the West Indies. We see the West Indies as pooling together with greater minds. Others who feel that it must be a Jamaican Court of Appeal. You know that, Asamba.
But then, okay, then, Bert, let me, what then, if that's the argument that, oh, let us have our own final Court of Appeal, what's intrinsically wrong with that? Explain.
No, don't use the word wrong. I am saying, don't use the word wrong. We have a University of the West Indies. We have a West Indian cricket team. They do well, don't they?
Yes.
So it is in further, we study together, the law together. Why can't we do a court with people with a common history, with speaking the same language, and it is for Caribbean unity? What? So we are making a mockery of CARICOM. CARICOM is an institution that we exude because it's all the Caribbean countries coming together. Why can't we come together with a court? We have the same legal system. There's so many pluses. In Jamaica, Alun knows, if you go to the courts down here, you barely can find a good bathroom, right? The courts are dilapidated in Jamaica. And if we put together, and it's an economy of scale, that we can have a better court with greater minds coming together. That's my position. So it's not that the Jamaican court is wrong. I'm looking at what is better.
But other than saying the court should be, if Jamaica should have its final court of appeal, no argument has been put forward to support that statement. I don't know any argument that has been put forward to say why is a final court in Jamaica better than a final court at the CCJ. Other than saying we should have Jamaica as our final court. I don't know what to make of it because I don't know what arguments have been put. It's almost like it is a red herring being thrown across the trail of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council and the Caribbean Court of Justice. We can make arguments for the Caribbean Court of Justice. I have not yet seen any argument for Jamaica being its final court. And I might agree with it if I see the arguments come forward.
All right, let me put this argument then to you, Alun, and then I'll put it to Bert, because do you find any comfort in the fact that Lord Reid said that, okay, they rely on the laws of the country from which the appeal comes, and it's not colored by what happens in the UK? Do you find any comfort in that?
Look here, it's about time come. We're 60 years independent. We have judges in the Caribbean, and I want to say this. People have asked questions about how it is that Barbados was able to just with the signing of a pen become a republic. You all must remember that Jamaica was the first. You know, and then when they were doing the constitution of the others, they were able to learn from what had been put in place for Jamaica. So they made certain changes in those countries. So they all do not have the same clauses that we have. Let me just say that. The other thing is, it's 60 years. When are we going to grow up? When are we going to stop thinking that the white man in England have more sense than we have? Because it comes down to that, you know. It comes down to not being honest about our own capabilities. That is where it has reached right now.
Do you find any comfort in those words, Bert?
You see, you know what's interesting about that? So my neighbor should come to my house and run my house because he's good and nice. I want to be the man of my house. I want to be self-determination. Cannot come from your judiciary being outsourced. Self-determination is when we govern ourselves, and a court is part of governance. And I don't understand why that's difficult to understand. The English would never accept a court out of France determining their day-to-day lives. So why should we? It's a self-esteem issue.
Do you buy that?
I would say 5 cases a year doesn't determine Jamaica's day-to-day lives. So I think the rhetoric needs to change, and let's look at what is really going to deal with our self-esteem. As a country, it's our education system and our health systems that really tells us how independent we are. That's really what needs to develop. I think the whole idea of changing the constitution is a bit of a distraction, when really our focus ought to be development. When I came to Jamaica in the 70s, you know, we were really going guns with regards to education and development, and that kind of spirit has just seems to have disappeared. And I think that we need to get back to that in terms of focusing on, capacity building the nation in terms of the education of all the people in the country,
Yes,
particularly the young people. That's what's going to make us independent and a power, in terms of world
I agree with
affairs.
you. I agree with
I
Anthony.
agree with
Anthony,
you
I'm
totally.
going to put on my reparations hat now. Do you think that the British, including the
Mhm.
monarchy, who was involved in the African um, slave trade, and they had a monopoly in the Caribbean and the Atlantic Ocean, do you think they should pay reparations so we can build good hospitals and give university education throughout? You think that the
Of
British, based on history, owe us that money so we can, and I'm agreeing with you, you say education and health? Do you think that reparations should be paid by Britain for that?
course I do.
But
I
before you
wouldn't be
answer,
Jamaican otherwise.
before
A
Anthony
part of
answer,
what I'm doing, just a minute, Alan.
before
Part
Anthony
of what
answer,
I'm doing, part of what I'm doing with the campaign with Windrush in taking the government to court, we decided that we would ask the barristers to go back to barracks, and we've started to talk to each other. So we've been having discussions with the Home Office over the last 18 months, because our understanding of reparations is you need to talk to the person, first of all, that you want to repair the harm that they've done and make them understand where it is. And we've got 5 themes. We've got work, we've got health, we've got community cohesion, we've got criminal justice, uh,
Good. Congrats. Congrats.
and we've got education. And what
Talk,
we're saying to the government
congrats.
is we need what we called a Commonwealth Community um, Cohesion Fund, whereby we can look at um, funding um, projects in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, and in the UK to repair that harm that has been done. One of the things that we're saying that it is the harm that has been done is the trauma that people have experienced. Now, you know that there's generational trauma which affects our health from enslavement. And we're developing the discussion along those lines,
Very good.
whereby
Thank you.
we can
Very good.
get them to accept that and to start resourcing the repairing of that harm. They've started in small ways and they started to understand the arguments. But unless we sat down and talked to them, we would have never have got anywhere. And
That's
what I
right. Yeah.
feel is
Yeah.
that
And their
what we're not
families were coming forward and apologizing.
what I feel is that a lot of times we spend time shouting and trying to make people believe that they were that this current generation is the ones that created the problems. What we need to show is that they are beneficiaries of what their ancestors did,
Oh,
and
yes.
the harm is
Agreed.
there, and they need to repair
Agreed
it.
you.
And they're understanding those arguments
I'm
now.
not
The Church
hearing.
of England with, they found down the back of the sofa 100 million pounds as a start to start delivering projects, and there are other organizations, Glasgow
Welcome.
University and
Welcome.
so on. So the conversations are going, and we're saying that we need to include, Jamaica, the Caribbean, in those
I'm
arguments.
sorry,
So,
I'm not hearing. I don't know if you all are hearing me.
We're hearing you alone.
I'm here near Lou.
My video
All right.
has stopped.
Okay. Are you hearing us now alone? I
Um,
don't think
okay,
she
we
is.
have 10 minutes left, right?
Yes, we have
yeah.
about
So
or
yeah.
less than that. And I
So
have
that's the
2
approach.
questions I want to get in. Just a
Well, one
second.
second. So that's the approach we're taking, and I'm saying that as well as that, we should be looking with regards to this issue about the judicial system, about discussing with the British authorities, as to how they can get advisors to the king, more diverse and reflective of the communities that they're serving.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, Bert, you did allude to this earlier in the discussion about and I've heard even one member of the the CRC mentioned that, oh, because you a particular dancehall artist got
Yeah.
justice at the Privy Council, then yay, see, it's working.
Yeah.
Let's go there.
Yes.
Let's keep it. You were successful in that. Do you
Yeah, I
then
benefited from that.
to
Yeah.
that argument then that,
Yeah.
oh, why are you so adamant against it? But see, you went there and you got
Yeah, but if I went to the Caribbean Court of Justice, I'd have got the same results.
Mhm.
I have no doubt that we would have won in the Caribbean Court of Justice. So it is not something that is so great about the Privy Council. It is that their Court of Appeal will make missteps and they are corrected by the Apex Court. The Apex Court can now be I'm sorry, Valerie isn't here because I wanted to debate that.
I know.
The Apex Court would now be the Caribbean Court of Justice, and I'm sure we would have succeeded. Listen, Michael Lorne won his case before the Privy Council recently. You know what that judgment was about? They endorsed the Court of Appeal of Jamaica's judgment. They didn't change it. They found that it was well reasoned. And also, the Poker decision, which says that we must police our clients, the Jamaican Court of Appeal interpreted the Charter of Rights in Jamaica and said that it is wrong for Poker to ask us to police our own clients. You know what the Privy Council did? They took a policy decision and said that reverse the Jamaican Court of Appeal and said that we must now police our clients. So there are bad judgments out of the Privy Council. Not all good. Trust me.
All right. Can you hear us now, Alun? I don't
No.
think so. No. Oh, you say no,
hold
you
on.
can't hear us?
I'm trying to see what I can do here.
Okay.
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you, Alun.
No.
All right. While Alun fix that, my other question then, Bert, is that we don't need a referendum to remove ourselves from the Privy Council. But the argument that many are saying, oh, let's put it to the people. Let the people decide. Are we going down a rabbit hole with that? If we look at the example that you gave earlier.
All right, well, remember now, Barbados didn't hold a referendum, right?
Yeah.
And I think Alun alluded to it. She said that you must have public education before you put it to a referendum, or you'll get an embarrassing vote. And we want people need to know the statistics that in England, they reverse their Court of Appeal more often than the Privy Council reverses us, because we're trying to make it look as if we don't have a competent Jamaican Court of Appeal. So the people have to be educated. They have to understand the history and role of the Privy Council, that it came right after slavery. They have done nothing to give us reparations, and public education must be done, and to show that you can't have a 2/3 divorce. You must have 100% divorce.
The other question then, Alun, if you're hearing us now.
I'm hearing you now. I came out and came back in.
Okay, and I had just put it to Bert, is the notion about the referendum. We don't need it to remove ourselves from the Privy Council. Why then are many putting the argument out there that we should put it to the people? And you mentioned the whole educational part of it.
Exactly. That does not need to go to a referendum. And if that is something that we can change by ordinary legislation, but in order to change that, you know that you have to have the approval of the two houses, right? And currently, it cannot be changed if a member of the opposition in the Senate does not vote with the government because of how the numbers are. So although the current government has enough numbers in the lower house to get a majority, it cannot be done unless the change cannot be made unless the Senate gets involved in the vote. Now, I believe, and I've heard the discussions that have been taking place, our people need to know and to understand how it is that their representative will vote. How it is that their representative will vote. And if it comes to that, say to their representatives, we expect you to vote in this way. To make such a change, we should have an agreement between government and opposition. The opposition has made its position very clear on the Caribbean Court of Justice for the last 20 years. Very clear that the opposition is of the view that we cannot disengage from the sovereign, the monarch as our head of state, unless we are going to do a full disengagement.
That's right.
My final question, I know I did say final question, but let me put this one, Bert, because somebody just sent that to me. They are saying that the CCJ is in Trinidad. It's based in Trinidad. However, Trinidad doesn't make use of the CCJ. Why are we pushing to go there?
Well, I think the citizens can choose to go CCJ or Privy Council in Trinidad. I think it's not bad. So, but you mean Trinidad should tell us is a model for Jamaica? I'm not sure about that. You know, they have their reasons. We're talking, this is a Jamaican discussion, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we think that the court needs to be itinerant. It should move around and should come here when we have Jamaican. In the Eastern Caribbean alone, you know, that happens. The court is an itinerant court.
Yes.
It moves to Grenada, it goes to so-and-so. So the lawyers don't have to take an aircraft to go to court.
The point is that I had said before, when I started, I made the point that I don't want anybody to come and tell me what other people are doing. This is a decision that Jamaica has to make for itself. It is a Jamaica decision. We have to make that decision for ourselves.
All right, we're at the end. What you were gonna say, Bert?
No, go ahead. I just endorse what Alud said.
All right, we're at the end of
I saw Miss Valerie. I wish Valerie were here.
Yeah, I know it would have been more heated than it is. But I do know that one thing that we have all agreed on is that there has to be that educational part for the people to understand what is it that is being put to them, what is it that people are deciding on their behalf.
And don't forget, if I could slip this in, don't forget that every morning the court opens in Jamaica. I don't know if Anthony is offended by this. We say, God save the king. So that brainwashing, tomorrow morning, all the courts will open it. That's brainwashing. If your God is to save the king, you don't want to get rid of the king, right?
Yeah.
So we have to be careful what has happened. We have to be real about the miseducation and adjust it. Thank you.
Yes, and we have to make sure that people have an understanding of what it is that they're being asked to vote on, or what their representative is voting on their behalf about.
I wanted to, if you don't mind, because I was here, so I wasn't able to get in. Anthony made a point about, what is needed in Jamaica is health and education and so on, and I agree with him totally, but it is not an either or. And we are not so blinded that we can't do more than one thing at the same time. We can have this discussion, we can improve our democracy, and we can improve, and we need to improve our education, we need to improve our health, we need to improve security and all of those things, because it's not either or. It's not one or the other. It is all together.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I want to thank Alun Samba, Bert Samuels, and Anthony for joining us this evening on the Irie Myrie and Friends show. It has been a really candid discussion. I've really learned a lot, and I look forward to have a more fulsome discussion, because I want to have you back, Bert and Alun, for us to look at the recommendations that came out from the CRC. Are we moving in the right direction? What more could be done in this alleged phase 1? Thank you for joining us here on the Irie Myrie and Friends shows, and we look forward to having more discussion. On behalf of my co-host, Irie Myrie, thank you for listening. We know you have a choice, and we thank you for being here. Have a great evening.
Thank you.